Just tell them that you do. When I thank you for your forgiveness.
This is Gary Ridgway, better known as the Green River Murderer, who's facing charges for multiple murders in Washington. Gary Ridgway was a serial killer who terrorized the state of Washington, snuffing out the lives of at least 48 women, most of whom were prostitutes or young runaways. Ridgway grew up in a home filled with violent arguments between his parents. He also had his fair share of personal struggles, bedwetting until the age of 13, a stabbing incident as a teenager, and an IQ reportedly in the low 80s. Surprisingly, during the 1970s Jesus movement, Ridgway experienced a spiritual transformation. He became a born-again Christian, passionately sharing the gospel and living according to his newfound faith. However, his dark side couldn't be completely subdued. His insatiable appetite for physical intimacy led him to visit prostitutes regularly, contradicting his religious convictions. From there, he started abducting, killing women, and throwing them into the Green River.
Marcia Chapman was on her back, and she had large boulders on her thighs, up her shoulder, but one arm was free.
Coming across Opal Mills. So here's a 16-year-old girl laying on her stomach, a large bruise on her buttocks, a ligature around her neck, laying face down, and, we just started doing our job.
In 2003, the day of reckoning finally arrived, and Ridgway was sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty.
Your statement begins as follows. I killed the 48 women listed in the state's second amended information. I killed so many women, I have a hard time keeping them straight. Is that true?
Yes.
And Mr. Ridgway, is it your desire to plead guilty to the 48 charges of aggravated murder in the first degree because you believe that you are guilty of each of those offenses?
Yes.
The courtroom was filled with anger and pain as relatives of the victims unleashed their fury upon him during victim impact statements.
It said your memory, when it comes to all of the women you took, was gone. Our memory is not. In your words, you said that they didn't mean anything to you, but she meant everything to us.
She was a mother, she was a wife, she was a sister, and we miss her.
I wish for him to have a long, suffering, cruel death.
He's gonna go to hell, and that's where he belongs.
Amidst the hate-filled wishes and imprecations, one Christian father named Robert Rule stood up. He had lost his daughter, Linda Jane, at the hands of Ridgway, but he chose a different path. With immense strength and compassion, Rule uttered words that shocked everyone present. You are forgiven.
You've made it difficult to live up to what I believe, and that is what God says to do, and that's to forgive. And he doesn't say to forgive just certain people. He says to forgive all. So you are forgiven, sir.
Ridgway, who had shown no remorse and even smirked during the trial, broke down in tears. Gary Ridgway is currently serving his life sentence at Washington State Penitentiary. However emotional you think Ridgway's case was, it can't be compared to the case of Takoya Kreiner. This is Takoya Kreiner, who's facing charges for first-degree murder in Jacksonville, Florida. Takoya Kreiner had opened fire in a gathering where 21-year-old best friends Jeffrey Hicks and Isaac Brown were smoking pot, drinking beer, and playing games. At the end of the senseless shooting, the two friends were dead. Officer Ike Brown, the father of Isaac, received the devastating news that his son had been tragically killed in a shooting incident. His bright young boy, known for his humor, love for basketball, and kindness, was taken away instantly. During the trial, Officer Ike met with the man who had taken his son's life.
Never hated him. Never had those feelings I thought I was going to have. It never transpired. When I looked at him, he looked like my boys.
But instead of feeling anger, revenge, or hatred, Ike was overwhelmed with an unexpected emotion, compassion. Ike chose to let go of hate and embrace forgiveness. He even desired to give the man who murdered his son a hug. Takoya was rightfully sentenced to life imprisonment for his heinous crime, but Ike didn't stop there. He continued to pray for Takoya, sending him a letter expressing his forgiveness. Through that letter, Ike's act of forgiveness opened the door to something extraordinary. In the end, Ike adopted Takoya into his own family, showing the world the true meaning of forgiveness. Officer Ike's faith was instrumental in granting Takoya forgiveness. However, it wasn't the only time a killer was forgiven based on faith. This is Granville Ritchie, who's facing charges for sexual abuse and murder of 9-year-old Felicia Williams in Tampa, Florida. In 2014, Felicia found herself in the company of Ritchie, a man unknown to Felicia, who had a connection to Ebony Wiley, a neighbor and friend of Felicia's family. Wiley had introduced Ritchie to Felicia, unknowingly paving the way for a horrific tragedy. On that unfortunate day, Ritchie was left alone with Felicia, while Wiley went out to buy marijuana. Upon Wiley's return, she discovered Felicia missing, and Ritchie claimed he had given the young girl money to buy candy, but that she never returned. However, the truth gradually emerged. Prosecutors presented a harrowing account of how Ritchie molested and strangled Felicia during Wiley's absence.
Granville Ritchie raped, strangled, brutalized, and murdered Felicia Williams. A child, the most vulnerable citizens we have in our society, children.
It's believed that he concealed the little girl's lifeless body in a suitcase before callously disposing of her in the bay. Wiley, who initially lied to the police about the events, was also charged with lying during a missing person investigation. Felicia Demerson, the grieving mother, stood before the judge, clad in a black dress adorned with a sparkling Hello Kitty pin, a tribute to her daughter's favorite character. Felicia and her family shared their pain and suffering, revealing the unimaginable torment Ritchie had inflicted on her family.
I just miss my grandbaby.
Her sister.
She meant the world to us, and he discarded her like she was nothing.
Her mother.
I've waited 2,310 days for this day to come.
Felicia's father, Jeremy Rodriguez Williams, urged Ritchie to seek forgiveness from Felicia's mother and to pray for it himself. He stated that he had already forgiven Ritchie, but warned him not to toy with God, as divine judgment would be severe.
Good morning.
Please state your name.
Jerome Rodriguez Williams. I'm not like everybody else, bro. I ain't got no ill will against you. That same Bible that you play with, bro, you get back to yourself, you get on your knees and you pray. Cause the journey you got ahead of you gonna need God. I forgive you. Ain't no anger towards you, bro. Abraham was willing to sacrifice his child. I sacrificed mine. I forgive you, bro. That's how strong my God is. That made me a better man. See, people all day long about they Christians. How can you be a Christian if you're not able to forgive a person that did wrong to you? You my brother. I don't care what nobody else say, I love you. You made a mistake. I forgive you, bro. I ain't got no ill will towards you.
Judge Michelle Sisko upheld the jury's recommendation and sentenced Ritchie to death.
Accordingly, as to count 1 for the first-degree murder of Felicia Williams, the defendant, Granville Ritchie, is hereby sentenced to death.
For many in the court, Ritchie was not deserving of forgiveness. However, there have been killers who have been forgiven, even when they don't deserve forgiveness. There was the case of Amber Geiger. This is Amber Geiger, an ex-Dallas Police Department patrol officer who's facing charges for murder in Texas. On the night of September 6, 2018, Botham Jean, a 26-year-old black man, was tragically killed when Geiger mistakenly entered his apartment and shot him. Initially charged with manslaughter, Geiger was later indicted for murder. The case sparked protests and accusations of racial bias. Jean was unarmed and killed in his home by a white police officer who allegedly disregarded protocols. Botham Jean and Amber Geiger lived in the same apartment complex called Southside Flats in Dallas. Geiger's apartment was on the 3rd floor, directly below Jean's 4th floor apartment. On that fateful day, Geiger had just finished a long shift and returned to the apartment complex. She was on the phone with her partner when she mistakenly entered Jean's apartment, believing it was her own. Failing to notice any signs that she was on the wrong floor, she entered the apartment, encountered Jean, who was unarmed, sitting in his living room eating ice cream. Geiger shot him twice, claiming she believed he was an intruder and feared for her life. Jean was taken to the hospital, but tragically succumbed to his injuries. During the trial, Geiger testified that she made a tragic mistake and believed she was in her apartment, perceiving Jean as a threat. In a highly emotional moment in court, Brant Jean, the brother of Botham Jean, shocked many by publicly forgiving and expressing his desire for Geiger to avoid prison.
I don't even want you to go to jail. I want the best for you. Can I give her a hug, please? Please?
Botham Jean's father also forgave Geiger, but insisted he wanted a tougher sentence.
Very easy to do it. I can be her friend, and I would like to be a friend, despite my loss. But God is good. Despite my questions. So I appreciate what Grant did. In as much, there are consequences for every action.
However, on October 1st, 2019, Geiger was found guilty of murder. The following day, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison.
We, the jury, unanimously find the defendant, Amber Geiger, guilty of murder as charged in the indictment.
Amber's actions could be blamed on tiredness, and her show of remorse might be sincere. However, some killers are rather shocked by the forgiveness offered by the parents of their victims, like in the case of Dylan Pakai and Shane Harrison. This is 20-year-old Dylan Pakai and 44-year-old Shane Pierre Harrison, who were facing charges for murder in Wellington, New Zealand. Pakai, responsible for shooting Sio, was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 12 years and 3 months. Harrison, who had a leading role in the incident, was also sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 13 years. Harrison already had a prior manslaughter conviction from 1987 when he was involved in a case of gang discipline that resulted in the torture of a victim. In that incident, he admitted to beating and stabbing the victim. The murder conviction served as his second strike, meaning he had to serve the life term entirely unless deemed unjust. Iafata Matalasi, the father of the late Aloncio Matalasi, known as Sio, initially vowed revenge if his son's killers were not convicted. However, his feelings changed, and he expressed forgiveness and a desire for the killers to be set free during a court hearing at the High Court in Wellington. He acknowledged that nothing could bring his son back, and that forgiveness was his only option, so he forgave them.
Without any reservations, Shane and Dylan, I forgive you. I plead with you to let Shane Pierre Harrison and Dylan Pakai go free.
He felt sympathy for the killers, their partners, and their children. He asked the judge to release them so they could start living with compassion for others. However, Justice Jill Mallon explained that she could not grant that request. Iafata Matalasi accepted the necessity of imposing jail terms in such cases. Pakai and Harrison were misguided youths in a gang, but however insensitive you think their actions were, it probably doesn't compare to the actions of Trey Relford. This is Trey Alexander Relford, who is facing charges for the murder of Salahuddin Jitmood in Lexington, Kentucky. Salahuddin was delivering pizza when Relford and his group lured him into an apartment complex, robbed him, and killed him. During the sentencing, Abdul Munim Sombat Jitmood, the father of Salahuddin, shocked the courtroom by forgiving Relford, citing forgiveness as the greatest act of charity in Islam.
I feel so sad for you that you have to be in this situation. I wish I could help you as I help my son to be a good citizen. If Salahuddin were to be here, if he alive, he will forgive you. That's the way he was. That's the way he is. I forgive you on behalf of Salahuddin and his mother.
Court resumed. Relford, wiping his tears, commended Jitmud for his powerful act of forgiveness and thanked him for his understanding of the pain and hurt caused. He apologized to Jitmud for his son's death, and the two shared an emotional hug.
I'm sorry about what happened that day. But I do applaud you, because it takes a powerful man to know that somebody has hurt them and do what you, get up there and say what you just said. I have a child. This shit is for. And I can imagine the hurt, the pain from what you learned.
This doesn't make any difference. When I thank you for your forgiveness.
Jitmud assured Relford that there was hope for a new beginning and urged him to become productive upon his release after 31 years. Despite Jitmud's forgiveness, Relford was sentenced to serve a lengthy prison term of 31 years for complicity in murder, complicity in robbery, and attempted tampering with evidence. Jitmud's act of forgiveness in court was unexpected, and he emphasized that his anger was directed towards the devil, not Relford himself, based on his religious teachings from the Quran.
I blame the devil who misguiding you and misleading you to do such a horrible crime. No, I don't blame you. I'm not angry with you at all.
Relford's mother, Gail Coote Bird, also spoke during the hearing, acknowledging her son's history with drugs. She thanked the Jitmud family for agreeing to a plea deal to spare Relford from a possible death penalty.
I am deeply sorry for your loss. And I thank you so much for comforting me and my family, because I was shocked to hear your forgiveness.
Relford's apologies and remorse showed that he may yet be saved. However, that wasn't the only time a young killer would be pardoned by a grieving parent. There was the case of Javon Coulter and Valentino Pettis. This is 14-year-old Javon Coulter and 17-year-old Valentino Pettis, who were facing charges for involuntary manslaughter in Cincinnati, Ohio. On the night of June 28, 2015, in South Cumminsville, Suleiman Abdul Mutakalim, a 39-year-old Navy veteran, was walking home from a White Castle with a bag of food when three robbers approached him. They robbed, shot him, and left him to die. During the court hearing, Rukia did something remarkable. After seeking permission from the judge, she approached Javon, who had just admitted his involvement in her son's death, and embraced him. She also hugged Javon's mother, wanting them to know she could see beyond the act that took her son's life. Rukia pledged to do everything she could to help Javon become a better person. She believed her son's death had a greater purpose, and she told Javon that perhaps that purpose was to save his life.
So to honor him, I am here, and I am offering my family to help you. And it's not because I want something from you. I just want better for you.
Despite the tragedy, Rukia acknowledged that the young men who killed her son were still children with mothers like herself. She expressed the need to fight for them, to provide them with guidance and support, to find a better path in life. Javon was sentenced to 20 years in prison, while Pettis will serve 14 years. If you thought these reactions were incredible, you'd be amazed at this video of 6 Bloods and Crips reacting to life sentences.